Hello, welcome to Cleveland Conversations. International cities are blessed with equally international cultural treasures. And in Cleveland, we have more than our fair share. So from the Rock Hall to the different museums we have, we are really fortunate as a community. Well, one of these treasures right at the forefront is Playhouse Square. And from its classic, elegant architecture to its world-renowned plays and performances, even the iconic chandelier right on Euclid Avenue, it's a wonderful community asset. We are very happy today to welcome the CEO and president of Playhouse Square, Mr. Craig Hassall, to our program. Welcome, Craig.
Thanks very much. Great to be here.
Yep. You have just a fascinating background that a lot of people may not necessarily be aware of. So you've been at real small-scale areas in leadership positions, such as Royal Albert Hall in London, the Opera Australia in Sydney, as well as a lot of others. Could you talk to us a little bit about what are some of the similarities you find in managing these types of cultural and performance institutions?
Sure. Well, I guess the first thing to say is I've kind of evolved into venue management in a way. So my background really is producing shows. When I was at the Opera in Australia, we were the principal tenant of the Sydney Opera House. So my job wasn't to look after the building, thank goodness. It's a very unique building. My job was to put on the operas, to produce the operas. And we produced about 27 a year. And I then moved from there to the Royal Albert Hall, where we were essentially a presenting house, meaning we didn't produce the shows, we presented shows like Cirque du Soleil and rock concerts and opera concerts and classical concerts and all sorts of things. But the Royal Albert Hall, I mean, it's a very famous building. It's one venue. Then I moved to Playhouse Square, which, as you probably know, is 12 and more venues, 12 and growing. So it's a very different proposition to move to a place where you have a lot of venues to manage and, in fact, 8 resident companies on top of all of our Broadway work and concerts. So different emphasis and different challenges, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. And why Cleveland? What attracted you? What inspired you to jump on board Playhouse Square in this area?
Sure. It's very simple. I had not heard of Playhouse Square. I had heard of Cleveland. I had a fairly good idea it was near San Diego, which it's not. I didn't know it was on a lake. I've learned a lot in the last 2 years. So I came here just to have a look around. I'd been at the Royal Albert Hall about maybe 6 years or so. So I thought, well, what's the harm in having a look? And honestly, when I saw the theatres, I was blown away. I had no idea that there was the number and quality of offerings on Euclid Avenue. I mean, as you know, as a resident, they're phenomenal. People don't know about Playhouse Square outside Ohio. It's extraordinary, and yet it's one of the most prolific and busiest theatre districts in the world. So that was very compelling. And I have to say, the other thing which really tempted me to consider moving my life to Cleveland was the attitude of the trustees. The Board of Trustees, and maybe it's a Midwest thing, I don't really know, I've not worked in the States before. The attitude of the trustees was so positive and can-do and what I call glass half full. It's almost as though nothing is off the table. Any crazy idea I might put in front of them their attitude would be, well, let's kick it around and see if it can work. And that's very unique in my world. So those are the two main things which really swung me.
Which of the performance areas is your favorite? I know that's an unfair question.
That's an unfair question. That's like saying, what's your favorite book?
Yeah.
Well, let's see. I mean, I've worked in theatre, Shakespearean theatre and regular theatre. I've worked in opera and ballet and rock and pop and classical music. If I'm at home, the music I'll probably put on would be either classical music or music theatre. So I'd probably say they're my favorite genres.
Mm-hmm. And talk about, since you've been in this area, the role of Playhouse Square in like a shared community, shared cultural identity of that area, of the culture, the performance arts area.
Yeah, well, there's actually 2 dimensions to that. The first is the role of Playhouse Square in the cultural ecosystem of Cleveland. And I, as I said, didn't know anything about Cleveland. And when I came here, I was very positively impressed by the level of the cultural offering in Cleveland. You have the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Art Museum, the orchestra, Karamu House we were discussing earlier, the small theatres around the city, small galleries. I mean, what's on offer here is disproportionately large for a city this small. I know it's a vestige of 100 years ago when Cleveland was this industrial superpower. Happily, those buildings have remained. The library is another great example. We have one of the best and largest libraries in the country, again for a small city. So that's the first thing in terms of context. Playhouse Square is a very important player in that world. But the second is the significance of Playhouse Square in the Broadway ecosystem. And people don't know this, that we have in Cleveland the highest number of season ticket holders in the country. More than Chicago, LA, anywhere. I mean, it's phenomenal.
And that's total number?
Total number.
Wow.
Yeah, about 44,000. The next highest is about 22,000. It's phenomenal. And what that means is that Playhouse Square and Cleveland is a very significant player in the Broadway ecosystem. So when it comes to touring shows, we have quite a bit of sway as to whether we would like a show, for how long, which show, and when in the schedule we'd like the show. It's attractive to come here because we're on the East Coast, close to New York. The producers love to come to Cleveland at the start of a tour, and when the shows come here, we're doing at the moment Anne Juliet, and I met the cast last night after the show, and they're thrilled because they have a 3-week set down, a 3-week season. Most venues are 1 week, and so it means just practically they can have their family come and stay, they can do their washing, they can relax and have a Monday off every now and again. So it's a really attractive place to come, and it's a very important part of the whole Broadway touring system, which is great.
Yeah, and Cleveland is very well known for its hospitality and its ability to host large-scale events and the like. So
Absolutely,
yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And you spoke a little bit about this before, but help us understand just the scale and scope of the operations that you're responsible for and you're leading.
Yeah, so it's bigger than people expect, and in a way we've tended, I think, to keep one part of operations under a bushel. So we present, well, about 10 Broadway shows a year in our 2 main theatres. And just to give you some idea about the scale of those, the largest theatre, the KeyBank State Theatre, is 3,200 seats, which is larger than any theatre in the West End of London. It's incredible, in Cleveland. So we do the Broadway season, but on top of that we present a range of rock and pop and comedy acts and so on throughout the year, a huge education program which has a vast span of attraction, and then 8 resident companies who do theatre, ballet, jazz, film, and all sorts of things as well. So that's a big operation. But the other part of our business, which is the one we don't trumpet as much, is the real estate side. And I was very pleased to discover that Playhouse Square owns about 2.2 million square feet of real estate. So we own all our theatres, we own office buildings, we own a hotel, an apartment building, and all sorts. And that gives us a very great financial security and also, honestly, quite a bit of control over the district that we live and work in. So that's helpful. But on top of that, we manage a further about it's almost now 3 million square feet of real estate for other people. So we manage industrial buildings, we manage office buildings and all sorts. So that's another income stream which supports education, because we're a not-for-profit, so we don't make a profit to deliver dividends to shareholders. We make a profit to put back into education programs and commission shows and things that will support the culture of Playhouse Square.
Well, whenever I have the opportunity to speak with somebody like yourself, I always want to learn, what's your thinking or philosophy, if you will, of managing so many, or collaborating with, if you will, so many different types of people? So creative types, people building stages, people building sets, business types, numbers people, strategic thinker people. How do you approach all of that?
That's a very good question. I think the key is you have to have a team that you trust and rely on. And I always say, half joking, if I'm doing my job well, I have nothing to do. Because you hire competent people with authority and you have faith in their ability and let them get on with the job. Now, of course, I'll always check in and I'll slightly lead the witness and steer things a certain way. And I think that the person in my role should be concerned primarily with strategy, fundraising, development, and looking, a few years down the track. And the running of the business should be entrusted to people that I work with and trust, and which I do. And I've got a terrific team. And that team, it spreads right across from marketing to fundraising to Broadway to real estate, and all sorts. So that's probably a quick answer to your question.
And you spoke to the, the vast importance of Playhouse Square in the performing arts, the cultural community. What about the economic impact? Because that's important as well.
Yeah, and it's funny, Playhouse Square, and it's grown hugely in the last 50 years. And I don't know if you know the story. It almost sounds like folklore, but the theatres were saved from the wrecking ball. I mean, the wrecking ball was literally outside on Euclid Avenue, waiting to demolish the theatres 50 years ago. So they were saved by the community, and then funded and restored by the community, and now they're used by the community, which is a wonderful story. The economic impact has become greater and greater and greater through the acquisition of real estate and the scale of the operations. And just to give you an idea, in 2019 was the last study that was done. The economic impact of Playhouse Square was $359 million per annum, which, to give you a context, is a little bit more than the Rock Hall plus the museum plus the orchestra combined. So we are a big player in the cultural scene, and the impact is vast. And as I say, the great thing with that is the impact benefits Cleveland. It doesn't benefit shareholders in New York or offshore. Anything that we make is returned to the community through commissions, education programs, and programming.
And that also, of course, supports a variety of local small businesses, be they restaurants, be they coffee shops, before or after performances as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, one thing we're growing now in the business is becoming even a greater player in the Broadway ecosystem by encouraging, through tax incentives, encouraging producers to open national tours here in Cleveland and commissioned shows to workshop in Cleveland, which means more work for local crews, for Uber drivers, for restaurants, as you say, taxis, security guards, all sorts of folk. And that's a really important part of our next sort of 5 years.
Yeah, let me shift gears a little bit. You alluded to a couple of these things earlier. What are some of the partnerships that you've put together in the Cleveland community?
Well, the great thing with this community is it is very collaborative. I mean, I came in in the wake of Gina Vernacci, who's the CEO before me, who's terrific and a great friend now. I didn't know her before I came, and we've become great friends. And Gina was very good at creating partnerships with Broadway and with local Cleveland institutions. And we're a very close-knit gang with me, the Natural History Museum, the Art Museum, the orchestra, the Rock Hall, and so on. And my strong sense is in areas like philanthropy, we don't really compete. People in Cleveland are very generous. They'll have their favorite charities. They'll give to those and maybe not others, or maybe both. But I don't feel for a moment that we're scrabbling for the philanthropic dollar or audiences. The Art Museum, for example, has this wonderful Picasso exhibition right now, which is doing really, really well. And at the same time, the orchestra is selling out at Severance Hall. We're selling out at Playhouse Square. So there are enough audiences to go around and enough philanthropists to go around and enough profile for all of us that we can all work together. And I find there are a lot of agencies that also work closely together. So for example, I'm on the board of Destination Cleveland, which is a great organization. They do terrific work to promote this city internationally for conventions and conferences and various things. And similarly, Downtown Cleveland looks after the sidewalks and the safety and security of residents in the downtown area, great partners of ours as well. And probably the most important thing I would say is that right now, there's a really strong alignment between the aspiration and direction of the county executive, Chris Renane, and the mayor, Mayor Bibb. Those two gentlemen seem aligned in where they want to take Cleveland, and that makes my job so much easier because I can jump into the slipstream of their ambition and support what they're doing with initiatives at Playhouse Square.
And are you doing anything with educational institutions as far as be they K through 12, be they at the university level?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I mean, that's a very CSU question and very timely. Two things. So we have a strong education program for very small children, and that's designed to particularly bring children who would never in their wildest dreams set foot inside a place like Playhouse Square. So we pay for the school buses, we pay for lunches, we bring those kids in. In fact, today, if you were to walk down to Playhouse Square today, which is not far from here, you'll see an infinity line of yellow school buses. And we have thousands of children who've come in to see a show today, which is terrific. And then on the other end of the cycle, we're working very closely with CSU, for example, and Baldwin Wallace and Tri-C to formalize a career pipeline for young people who want to work in our industry, or may not know they want to, but want to learn more about it. So it's very important that if we start to formalize this link between Playhouse Square and, say, CSU. So if we can say to someone who's studying lighting design at CSU, if you study here in this university, you'll be guaranteed a secondment on a Broadway show for a semester. Now that's absolutely gold. And it helps CSU when you're out in the field selling this institution. It gives you a competitive advantage over other places to encourage students to come here. So it's good for the university, it's good for us, but most importantly, it's great for those young people who want to work in my industry.
Mm-hmm. And that helps broaden your audience for the future as well. The children and children's children moving forward.
It does. And even if it doesn't do that, I would say we haven't failed. I think the most important thing with education of very young people is just creating awareness of what's out there in the world, particularly in the area of child literacy, which is a huge problem here in Cleveland but around the country. And I don't do this to really build audiences per se. If that happens, that's a great byproduct, but I just want to inspire those young people to think more about the world beyond their own life.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say are, I mean, we spoke about the thriving community that you're serving. What are some of the main challenges you see coming forward on the horizon?
Sure. When I was here I've been here for 2 years, and after my first year, I entered the Leadership Cleveland program, which is this terrific program. In fact, Dr. Bloomberg has been through the program as well. And it's a great program. It opened my eyes to a whole swathe of issues in Cleveland. Things like social housing issues and infant mortality, and there are some big issues facing Cleveland. And my takeout from the year was, we haven't got it right yet, but we're going in the right direction. And there's an awful lot of work happening behind the scenes to improve the condition of people living in Cleveland. And there are big things to solve, but I'm very confident that the right people are in the right places and the work's being done to solve these issues.
Mm-hmm. And what are some of the challenges you're seeing from your particular community, the performing arts, the cultural arts? Or is it full steam ahead?
It's full steam ahead. I mean, we're in a very lucky position that we're not a producing house, we're a presenting house. So we have the privilege of going to New York and seeing Broadway shows and almost try before you buy. So I can look at a show like & Juliet, which is playing right now, and so that's a great show. I know Cleveland loved that show. It's funny, it's musically so robust and so on, and then I know it will sell in Cleveland. So the supply chain is good. There's a challenge with Broadway. Broadway is facing a little bit of a problem in terms of the cost of capitalization of shows on Broadway, because union costs are very high, theater costs are very high, and that's a potential problem, because if the supply dries up for places like Playhouse Square, that's a problem for us. I don't see that happening in the near future. It's just something we need to keep an eye on in the future. What it does in the short term, though, it actually increases the importance of the touring circuit. So it's good for Playhouse Square. Without being too political, I do have a concern about the current political climate. I'm worried that there's potential for censorship or limitation of artistic expression. And in any country where that happens, it's never a good thing for the arts or for the people of that country. So I have a slight red flag about that, mm-hmm. and we'll have a watching brief and see how that rolls out.
Mm-hmm. And one thing you kind of spoke to right there is balancing sort of the financial realities versus the artistic expression, the creativity side of it. How does that work in your own mind when you're trying to juggle those balls, if you will?
It's something you have to always keep an eye on. You know, without financial security, you have nothing. You can't take a risk. You can't go out on a limb. You can't deliver what audiences would expect. We always try and balance the Broadway season, for example, with light and shade, so that there's a mixture of shows on the horizon. I mean, it's interesting. We began this calendar year with The Life of Pi, which is a play, very challenging subject matter, beautifully produced, followed by Parade, which is a musical based on a true story, again, a very challenging subject, and it was heartbreaking, but audiences very much responded to the subject matter. And then & Juliet, which is completely frivolous and ridiculous, but so much fun. And then we'll have Kimberly Akimbo and Shucked and various things. So the balances are very important. On the financial side, we are generally okay on the Broadway sales because it's a subscription, so people buy a package of 7 shows. On the real estate side, real estate in Cleveland is, it's up and down. we had to be very prudent about managing, purchasing, and releasing real estate. And I'm learning a lot about the real estate world, by the way. That's not my background. And that's where risk-taking is important, but being prudent financially is equally important.
What would you like to talk about with your current and upcoming season?
Goodness me, well, we just announced the last show of the next season, and we put it on sale only about a week ago, and I must say already the uptake is incredibly high.
Tremendous.
It's tremendous.
Congratulations.
I'm really pleased. Because it's the first season I've really had investment in personally by seeing all the shows, a year or so ago in New York, and it's interesting. I'm very pleased, but it's interesting when we choose the shows. I can't just choose shows that I like. It's a case of choosing a show that I know will work for the Cleveland market, which I'm learning about what the market here does and doesn't like. But so far, all 7 shows are doing really well. So the one if I had to pick a favorite, which I really shouldn't do, I would say The Outsiders is the one that's a clear favorite. We invested quite a lot of money in that show. The 2 lead producers are from Cleveland, even though the show is set in Tulsa, and it began its life in La Jolla in San Diego. It's a very Cleveland produced show. It's terrifically emotional and well put together. It won Best Musical at Tony Awards last year. It's an absolute hit, and I'm so pleased that show is kind of coming home to Cleveland. It'll do so well here.
I'd go with Life of Pi myself, but that's here and there. What advice would you give? You've been incredibly successful, incredibly prolific, visionary leadership in so many different places. What advice would you give to your younger self if you had a do-over with some things?
Goodness, I'd probably say follow your heart. There are so many things that pull at you career-wise over time, and there's a lot of pressure to do things that will simply make money or make your parents pleased and so on and so on. And I would say forget about both those things. That's probably terrible advice to say at university, but follow your heart and jump around as much as you possibly can. I think if you feel you're being pigeonholed into a career, then get out of that career or go traveling. It's funny, when I was young, if someone had a resume which had a year missing because they were on a gap year or they were climbing Machu Picchu or something, that would be a pejorative. We think, well, we're not going to hire that fellow or that lady because of that. Nowadays, I would see it as a positive. I'd say if you've gone off and hiked in the Andes for 6 months and then canoed down the Amazon, I would say I would hire you in a heartbeat. So see the world and get out there and experience what's out there before you settle into your chosen career.
And was there, without throwing anyone under the proverbial bus, is there a specific moment in your career when you did a pivot to that determination? You needed to get away, you needed to experience different things, do different things?
Absolutely. I worked on the Sydney Olympic Games, and I was in charge of all the cultural programs. So it was a huge thing, and I had a great team. And the final year of that was the year 2000, when probably most students weren't born. And we had a festival with 6,000 artists, and it was a huge thing, And after that, I just thought, I need a break. And that's actually, I took about 6 months off and didn't really do anything, just recovered from what had been 4 years of totally intense, make it up as you go, creative planning. So having a break and just a sort of reset was really important. Then I went to work for a theatre company, and then I came to London, worked in ballet. So it was very helpful to step back from the grind, the cultural grind, and think about my future. And I think it's very hard to change careers when you're in a job because you're so focused on what you're doing day to day. I think you do need a bit of time, a bit of headspace to consider what's out there.
Mm-hmm. And you've spoken a little bit about career development, pipelines that you've intentionally worked on and the like. What would you say to young persons that are looking for a career in your area? What should they be doing? Who should they be talking to? What should they be spending their time on?
I would say have the chutzpah to get on an email or get in front of someone and say, could I come and talk to you about what you've done? And then from there, say, could I just come for a week and observe what's happening? And I had a young fellow at Playhouse Square who, of his own bat, said, could we just go for a coffee and talk about my career? I said, absolutely. So we did. And as a result of that conversation, we're now going to put him in New York for a couple of weeks at one of the agencies working on marketing Broadway shows. because that's maybe where he wants to head. Now, that's just this young guy having the chutzpah to go, well, what about this? So I'd say be bold. The worst that'll happen, someone will say, I don't have time to meet with you. Well, fine, so what? But yeah.
Yeah, and let's finish up with speaking a little bit about what are some of the variety of opportunities that people can pursue. So you just spoke about marketing, which may not be the first thing that pops to mind when somebody talks about Playhouse Square. What are some of the vast variety of things people can look at?
On this discussion on pipeline, we went through the sort of vast canvas of opportunities, and people think in my world that if you want to work in the performing arts, that means being on stage or playing in the orchestra. There are so many careers. I mean, backstage, you have crew, stage management, wigs, wardrobe, props. You have construction of sets, costumes, wigs, all sorts. There's logistics, tour managers, production managers. There's so many roles. It's a bit like television. The roles that are there to support the industry are vast. And they're not always apparent as well. And then on the other side, as you say, sales, PR, marketing, communications, tour management is a huge part of the role. A friend of mine just took a job with Six the Musical. He works in London. His sole job is plotting international tours for Six the Musical, which is huge. So there's a lot of work behind the scenes. And I would say, ironically, the most longevity is probably in a career that isn't on the stage. There's much more opportunity for careers that are behind the scenes, because you can jump around, which I've done in my career. I've jumped from ticketing to marketing to finance to planning to operations and all sorts. And they're all fascinating. And if you're bright and ambitious and driven, then those careers are there waiting for you.
That's great. Well, our thanks to Mr. Craig Hassall for sharing both his insights into his incredibly prolific career, as well as some of the visionary leadership he's providing to Playhouse Square, and of course, what we can all learn from him as far as how to pursue opportunities in that field. So with that, thank you so much for watching this episode of Cleveland Conversations.